Greetings, science fiction and fantasy enthusiasts, and welcome to our podcast. With Ryan Sean O'Reilly, David Wilkinson, and Richard Mell. You're listening to No Deodorant in Outer Space. Now, let's get started.
The whole place looked as if a sea of blood had been beating against it. Each of the explosions from below had thrown out from the well hole, as if it had been the mouth of a cannon. A mass of fine sand mixed with blood and a horrible, repulsive slime in which were great red masses of rent and torn flesh and fat. As the explosions kept on, more and more this repulsive mass was shot up, the great bulk of it falling back again. The mere amount of this mass was horrible to contemplate. Many of the awful fragments were of something which had lately been alive. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to another fine edition of No Deodorant in Outer Space. I'm your illustrious host, Ryan Sean O'Reilly, and joining me, as usual, is Richard Mell.
Hello, everybody.
Also, with me is his fine companion, David Wilkinson.
Hello. Hi. How you guys doing? I'm just... maybe you should do another quote. I mean, how is that the quote you chose to open the show with?
You know, I couldn't find a good quote on this book. It was hard to find a quote. And
yeah.
When I read the book, this part stood out to me as good reading, and that's why I went with it. But I agree with you that this was not necessarily the best quote. But usually I check Goodreads and they have quotes and people vote on them, and you see like what the top ones are. There was only like one kind of weird quote that didn't make any sense by itself, and I was looking around, I couldn't find something that stood out to me better.
No, it's not.
The dialogue itself wasn't particularly good.
No,
in the book.
it's just such a graphic quote. I mean, it's probably the most graphic opening quote we've ever
It
had.
is.
Yeah, a lot of.
Well, I thought it was like of the story. I thought that was kind of the better writing of the story, and I just wanted to have an example of good writing. But that was the only reason why I chose it. Otherwise, it was kind of an odd scene to choose.
It's weird because my grandpa has that exact quote written on his gravestone too. But it's a story for another time.
Was he buried in a wormhole?
Is that like anti-Semitic? All right. Anyways,
I don't know what.
Very sensitive.
Yeah, he's Jewish. I mean, I don't know why you're
sensitive.
trying to imply.
That quote was related to a wormhole.
That's racist.
Why are you trying to corner me into something?
Whatever, Trump.
So, okay. In this episode of No Deodorant in Outer Space, we are covering The Lair of the White Worm, which came out in 1911 and was written by Bram Stoker. There was also a film under the same name that came out in 1988, directed by Ken Russell, starring Amanda Donohoe. Donohoe or Donahue? Donohoe, I think.
And her breasts.
Yes, that's correct. All of her.
Every part.
So, does anyone have any general updates? Excited besides the behind-the-scenes flame war of
scheduling,
of texting that precedes this?
Please.
Rick never likes to talk about it, but
scheduling. They want to hear that. Come
on.
People
don't want to talk about scheduling, but it's always interesting that our shows are prefaced with like a flame war of text messages.
I had a thought before we recorded tonight, and please don't edit this out or at least put it at the end. But like, I realized that. I often think that the two of you are the biggest assholes in the world, and I can't believe I'm working with you in a podcast. And I realize all three.
That's funny. I feel the same way about you.
I know. No, that's what I'm saying. I realize all three of us are insufferable pricks, and we're impossible to work with. It's good that we're working together. I can't think of other people that could do as much antagonistical shit as we do on a weekly basis, and still put, because it's like no matter what I do, I'm like, well, Ryan will do something worse, and Rick will just piss me off again. So fuck it. I mean, but yeah.
It is amazing how quickly our system of communication degrades into just straight out like bland, like just blatant insulting, like in a turn of a dime.
I often like look at my phone and I'm like, I have the things on mute now so they don't beep during the day. And there's like 80 text, 80 text messages. I'm trying to scroll up and it's like Rick's calling you like, you fucking flatulent jackass. I'm like, what the fuck? Ryan's just like repeating the same phrase over to piss off somebody. I'm like what started this? And like, I want to record at 8. No, 9. Fuck you. And that's so I don't know. I was kind of cracking up because I was like all pissed off. Like I don't know, at least 5 times a day I sort of never talked to you guys again at one point. And then
that did cross my mind today as well.
But no.
Why am I doing this? That's a frequent question in my head.
Oh, frequent.
Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
It's for the pussy.
It's a daily thought for me. It's a daily prayer. So.
But it really isn't that hard. It's just getting down here. It really isn't that hard. Speaking of the white worm.
Oh, shit.
So on that note, why don't we go around and say our opening comments to start off the show. I want to go to Richard Mell first.
Oh, this is good because it relates to your opening statement, and it's Bram Stoker's classic satanic swan song, complete with an overture of peeping Victorian courtesans and a final erupting crescendo from an ancient colossal toilet in the heart of England.
Oh, wow. Mr. Mell, you really came prepared this episode. I like it. Dave, where can we go from there?
I kind of had to make myself... what am I doing here?
Opening comment.
It's a good story, but I kind of had to make myself read the book. I felt like the writing really kind of didn't capture my imagination. Yeah, that's my opening comment. Not a great opening comment, but
fair enough.
Yeah.
And for mine, I will say a meandering gothic tale of wormish fiends overshadowed by a giant kite and frequent supper respites.
Oh my God.
Interesting. So those are our opening comments. The story, of course, is written by Bram Stoker. As you said, it was, or indicated, it was his last published novel.
Yeah.
Rick, you're going to tell us a little bit about Mr. Stoker, so why don't we turn things over to you and you can give us some background on this world-renowned and famous author.
Well, you know, there's a lot of things about it. Well, he grew up in Northern Ireland. He was an Irish Protestant, and his father worked for basically Royal Civil Service, administering the government, I guess. He was a lifer there, his father was, and he brought Bram, into this workplace. He worked there for about 10 years, starting from late teens. I get the feeling that he probably hated the job. It was boring as all hell. And in the meantime, he just sort of sharpened his writing craft. Because at the end of the 10 years, yeah. You got anything to add to that?
Well, I guess this is probably where you're going, is he, on the side, I think for free, wrote reviews of plays.
Yeah, on the side.
He was an original podcaster, as you might say.
An appreciation for, the arts. He was an original podcaster, sure. But he loved theater. And that's how he met his good, I wouldn't call this guy Abraham Stoker's friend. It's more of like a person that he was kind of a lapdog to, or, he pretty much did all of this guy's correspondence. This guy was Sir Henry Irving, and he ran and acted. He was the lead actor, and he was also the lead manager of the Lyceum Theater, which was I guess it had the reputation of being the best classic theater in
Shakespearean, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Henry Irving was world-renowned.
He was world-renowned, the first actor in England to be knighted.
And my understanding is that he bought that theater himself. He must have been so successful that he took over the theater. And then, like you said, he needed a manager, and then he ended up, well, go on.
Well, yeah, I mean, he wrote thousands of letters for this guy every month. So he was just chief correspondent. He knew everything going on about this theater. And
he was like a personal assistant to Irving, right?
He was a personal assistant, sure. I would classify him
as theater manager. He did tons of work for this guy.
But he was also, satisfying all of his appreciation and, for the arts at the same time, just getting to know, various elite artists in England at the time. So he developed relationships with the Sir Henry Irving. And Henry Irving started off as he was in the lower classes, and he worked himself up because he loved Hamlet so much. He would play Hamlet, but he got so far up on the ladder, he started like these arts organizations. He was a member of the Savages in England. He was also a Freemason, which was kind of a big deal. I guess it still is. Who knows what they're up to?
Do you know what the Savage Club was? I didn't know what that was.
The Savage Club was just a group of. It was kind of like more of a playful group. Obviously, the name they gave themselves, but it was just a group of artists. Okay.
Oh, they were
liberal
artists. Okay.
arts.
All right.
Not like, lawyers or anything. It was, at its root, it was about art and people involved in it.
Okay. So that's different than like the
But it quickly became like an elitist club. So he also came to know this very interesting guy, and I was doing a little bit of research on him. His name was
Walt Whitman?
Vanbury. Yeah, Walt Whitman was the American that he knew that was kind of like most notable. But this guy was a Hungarian, and he was a Turkist. So he knew like 24 different dialects of Turkish. And he basically was a double agent and like a double crosser. He worked for England. He was a Hungarian, and he did journalism. And he would live for long stints in Turkey. He'd travel to the Middle East. He'd pass himself off as like an imam. And he was like a perfect spy working for the British government, writing anti-Slavic journalism, basically, in Turkey to, perpetuate a war with Russia, basically.
How did Stoker meet this guy?
Not sure how he met him, but I mean, he knew various elitists in and around England. This is like the perfect guy because this is English diplomacy in the 17th, 18th, 19th century. They would run all kinds of proxy wars all over England, and this Hungarian was part of it. His name was Vanbury, and Vanbury gave him the consulting for him to develop Dracula. He wouldn't have written about Dracula's character at all if he hadn't met this Hungarian. So he just had a lot of impact on his life. I don't know exactly how long he consulted him for, but yeah.
Just to tag on to that, I know I read and saw it a couple places that Stoker actually never went to Eastern Europe, the places he wrote about.
No, he never went there.
But he went to the library a lot and probably, I guess, supplemented his talks with this guy with a lot of research and reading a lot of different books,
right?
Tourist books on the area, and he was just very, very well researched to create like an authenticity to the book. But I mean, I guess it's a lot of people when they read the book thought he'd been there, but he never did.
He loved the British, which is odd considering this is following the potato famine / Holocaust, where the British pretty much murdered 6 million people. The famine was a long time ago. Yeah, it was like 50 to 100 years ago. No, that was in the 1800s, dude.
Well, it was in the 1800s, but like it was before Stoker's time, right? The famine.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, it was right after the famine, right?
I mean, if you recall,
and there was a lot of
Irish didn't, fight with the British in World War II. They were so upset about that. And other things. I'm just saying, it's odd that he chose to, expatriate himself to Great Britain from Ireland.
Yeah.
Well, the way that I look at it is from day one, I mean, from him coming into the world, his father already did that. And basically, Bram is living out his father's dream, basically. I mean, this is probably what he wanted for his son, is to become a monarchist. And, he supported, what did he support? Home rule, which it sort of contained Ireland as sort of like a Republican conglomerate of imperial, United Kingdom,
Mm-hmm.
and he backed that. He was never really Irish. He was Protestant, and he only represented a small portion of Ireland anyway.
But now the Irish claim him now, which is also kind of funny. Now they love saying he's the son of Ireland, but he was really just a bastard that a true Irishman would hate back in.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Did his father come over to England, or he came over to England? I thought he was living in Ireland when Henry Irving hired him.
You asking or
I was asking.
Turncoat Hungarians, fathers. This is good stuff, guys. Good stuff.
Is it?
I don't know. I'm sure there's more about Bram Stoker we can talk about than his dad and where he's from, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm just moving along. Yeah, sorry.
Sure. Let's see. Well, those are the kind of the highlights of my research. When did he die? And do you know when he died? Let's wrap this up.
I forget when he died. I mean, I think Wilk has something to add about his death, but I know.
I don't.
When he died. He dedicated his whole life to Irving, big time. He even followed him to the States multiple times, toured the world with him.
I mean, it's not exactly respectable, but
probably neglectful to his wife and kid. To that point,
neglecting his homeland too, Ireland.
And he even when Irving died. And also Irving was not a big fan of Dracula, supposedly, even though Dracula, had some popularity. Supposedly, well, we don't get too far into Dracula, but supposedly Bram Stoker wanted Irving to play Dracula in a play version and might have modeled Dracula after Irving. And to protect the playwrights, they think Bram Stoker had a stage version, a reading of the book done or in a play format, I guess, on stage so they could protect it. And Irving supposedly was sitting in the audience and walked out on it and said it was dreadful. That's the rumor anyways, even though he was such a loyal person to this guy and continued to be loyal to him. After Irving died, he wrote memoirs, I think 2 volumes on Irving, about Irving's life. And that was actually Bram Stoker's biggest publication, I think, at the time, not Dracula. Dracula didn't become popular till later when the movies started coming out.
What? And there was no. It was Dracula was very popular in his lifetime. There weren't any movies until well after his death.
Right. It was not as popular as it became.
Well, okay, yeah, it became more popular, but it was very popular. He was known for Dracula.
It was not. I think only like it was not a hit. Like it became eventually.
It was the first movie. It
absolutely was a hit. He was very famous for Dracula, not for those goddamn memoirs that you're talking out of your ass about.
No, the memoirs were his biggest hit.
You're right. His memoirs about Sir Henry Irving, because of his own celebrity in itself, that sold all those copies. But Dracula obviously
surpassed it. Later, and part of it was because of the movies. Originally, there was an unauthorized version of Dracula called Nosferatu. I think
let's remind our readers that we're not actually doing a podcast about Dracula. Oddly enough,
oh, that's true.
It defined his career. Yeah,
it was. So it's hard to talk about Bram Stoker without mentioning Dracula. So I mean, we don't have to get into Dracula. We can, that's for another time. But
Lair the White Worm, though, it is about elitism and nobility.
Well, but we can get into all that. But so Bram Stoker. Well, why don't you add about his death? I think you were telling me some interesting things about his death. We can wrap.
I honestly forget what I was saying about his member. Refresh.
Oh, I thought you'd be all over this. Well, so there was a specific medical term that he died of. I think you had it in the what was it?
Syphilis?
Septic shock?
It was syphilis, I thought.
Excessive flatulence?
The term, they used a Latin term to describe his, I don't know if it was Latin, but they used a term to describe his death, which was like, I guess, a polite way to hide the fact that it was locomotor ataxia is what he died of for after 6 months. And they said that was a way to disguise that he probably died of syphilis. Or tertiary syphilis.
Sure, yeah, that was pretty common among the elite.
Yeah,
these just kind of like benign diagnosis of their death, but then there's like the real McCoy somewhere buried in like the hospital file book.
Looks like we have in the notes he died in 1912.
Well, and again, I actually reached out to the estate of Bram Stoker, no joke, and they responded, and I asked them for the insight of this book, and they basically said it's not one of his better novels. He wrote it while he was dying, and there's not really much they can say about it other than that. He was sick when he wrote it. And I think that's really apparent from reading the book, which we should probably get into.
It came out like a year after his death, or a year before his death.
Like punctuation errors, misspellings.
All right, let's it's something. Let's move into the book. So if we're gonna get in the book, then let's go to Wilk, and Wilk can give us however you can, some kind of summary of this plot in Ready and Go.
I'm going to stay away from any kind of themes. I'll let Rick jump into that. But the plot kind of starts out like Downtown Abbey a little bit, and then it becomes it turns into like
Downton Abbey.
Yeah, Downtown Abbey. Downtown Abbey.
Downtown Abbey.
Downtown Abbey. It's the urban version. It's in the south part of London. It's great. We should really make a podcast with Downtown Abbey.
About Downtown Abbey?
A hip-hop look at British culture. Good shit. Okay, now I'm retarded. Okay, so anyways, it starts out like Downton Abbey. It seems like a classic British class tale where this man wants to make someone his heir, and he's interested in various women, and you're like, oh, this is the dance, the courtship, a Victorian tale of class and privilege.
Oh, God.
And then very early on, they introduce this white worm, which seems strangely out of place. I'm like, well, maybe it's a metaphor. Then after a while, I just realized it's just bad writing. I mean, I think the guy was like out of his mind when he wrote this, and it's just not a lot of story structure, and it leads to this, basically, there's a series of bizarre crimes, children getting mutilated and tortured, people getting hurt, and then they just blow shit up at the end. And that it's very
ends with a
bang, so to speak. It ends quite abruptly. So I wouldn't recommend this book to anyone at all. I mean, I'd say it's the work. I mean, if he wasn't famous when he wrote this, it never would have gotten published. It's got some cool concepts in there, but it's just like
it does, yeah. Concepts of like statecraft. From, it was basically the advisor to the protagonist of the story. His name was Sir Nathaniel. He was a tired diplomatist. And I can see Bram inserting his own sort of ego into that character, Sir Nathaniel, because he had to be a diplomat the entire time he worked in his career. I mean, he was always sort of like
for Irving,
displaced person. He was working among the English, nobility, and for Irving as well.
He's probably like a PR guy.
I'm sure all he could do basically is just not stir the pot.
I'm lost. Who is displaced? Irving or Stoker?
Irving in his life, but I mean, Irving had to be a diplomat.
No, you're saying Bram was displaced.
Oh yeah, right? Bram was a displaced person throughout his life.
Why?
Okay?
Why was he displaced?
And how does that tie into the story? Well,
because he was living.
I think the most interesting character in the story
how was he displaced? He was not displaced.
No. I mean, he's an Irishman. He's working in London his entire life.
He married a woman from London. He loved being in London. He wasn't displaced.
For sure. Yeah. But I mean, he was also kind of like...
You get the sense that he probably loved it there. He was all about the theater and the arts, and he was in London.
But he was all about that, and he was a writer, but the writing in itself suggests that he was probably on his own most of the time. Like, he wasn't like
he was incredibly social. He started a social club that still exists today. He traveled the United States. He was friends with celebrities and politicians. I think
he might have been on his own, but he was out having fun. He was out
while he was out being social. He had to mind his P's and Q's.
Was he sad on the inside?
No,
is that what we're saying?
He was not a sad clown. He was extremely. He was polished. Okay. He had to be a diplomat because of this entire new sort of scene that he was a part of. That he only lived, after he was 30 years old. I mean, he was new to the scene. He had to be a diplomat. And I thought that was the most interesting character, was this retired diplomat, Sir Nathaniel.
Okay, but why does that have to be him?
Really?
I guess.
It's Rick's interpretation. That's fine.
All right.
It's my interpretation of like how he left his fingerprint in the story.
Here's a question, and let me throw a question off of that Sir Nathaniel thing. Okay, the book opens up with Adam is the main character. Adam
Sultan.
His Uncle Sultan, like Wilk said, seeks him out and says, "You're going to be my heir. I'm gonna, make you the heir of all my fortune." So he starts off with like it feels contrived because it's so old, and we've seen Adam arrives, meets his uncle, and then his uncle introduces him to his friend Nathaniel, and then the uncle is kind of like out of the story. The rest of the story. Does the uncle ever come back?
I have no idea.
Yeah, he kind of devolves. He devolves, and he basically fades away after the first half of the book.
But the whole time he's staying
after a conversation that Adam has with Sir Nathaniel.
But this is one of the problems I had.
Telling Adam that he's got to release the pressure from his uncle because he's too old. He can't take all this drama.
They're staying at his uncle's place.
As soon as they have that conversation,
they're worried about the uncle. They're constantly talking about the uncle.
They're
like, "Oh, we can't let him know about this. We can't let him know about that. Oh, wait, now it's time to let him know. Now it's not. We better tell him now because it's gonna hurt his feelings or hurt his reputation." And like but Stoker never brings the uncle back into it. I mean, the whole plot centers around Adam meets some girls that he likes. There's a love interest thing about that. But then there's this new who's the antagonist? What's his name?
Edgar Caswell.
Edgar Castle. He arrives from being he was like off traveling or something, right? And he's back in town. And he's causing quite a stir.
He's never been on the property, And he's 30 years old. He decides to come back
on a different property, but near
his family's home. Yeah.
So it's near them. So
he was living in North Africa, right?
And then he likes these two girls who the protagonist like, and there's this weird thing where he comes over and stares at them for like an hour.
It's like a staring contest. Yeah.
It's like a staring contest, literally, for
There's no dialogue. There's nothing. It's Bram Stoker describing the staring contest. Yeah.
And then they do it again and again. And every time Adam, the protagonist, comes back and tells Nathaniel, "Oh, you can't believe it. This guy just keeps staring at my chick."
These staring scenes, they must last like 15 minutes because, I mean, it's covering like 3-4 pages,
And he just comes back and just complains about all these staring going on. And then I'll be like, "Oh no, he's going to come over there again and stare him off again. I got to get over there and help him out."
Yeah. Honestly.
And everyone, it just shows up for these staring contests.
I really think this book doesn't warrant much discussion. I mean, it's almost embarrassing that it got published for him. It is. I mean, like it's got components of stuff, but it's like I think
there are different interesting quotes.
I appreciate the statecraft from Sir Nathaniel and the way he advised Adam Sultan to maneuver.
You love Sir Nathaniel, my God.
Yeah. Oh, I love him.
I think that at the time before hypnotism thing came about and mesmerism was around, and I think he's incorporating that because it's kind of what's going on at the time as like kind of like a dark, interesting thing. And also Bram Stoker had friends that were interested in the cults and mysticism. So he brings that element in, which is interesting, but ultimately it just kind of doesn't really work. And I don't even know. It probably didn't even work at the time. But then you have the side plot where the neighbor Lady Arabella, is kind of acting weird to people, and they're bringing mongooses around, and she, like, what does she do? Like, some mongoose came over and bothers her, and she shoots it in the face, and he's like, oh, you shot my mongoose. So then, for some reason, he ends up over at her place, and, well, no, at some point they notice there's a legend of a worm in the area, and then they see this giant worm, and worm in that term is essentially like a great serpent, almost like a dragon, but I don't know if it has wings or anything. And it's slithering around the forest searching for them, and it ends up back at Lady Arabella's place, right? And they track it down to a well in her place. And there is some kind of interesting thing, because he sets this background about the Roman
backstory there,
the Roman history there, and how there's been like legends of this creature terrorizing the area. And did you guys understand? Like at some point, I guess I thought Lady Arabella was the worm, but I guess she wasn't the worm. She was like the keeper of the worm. Is that what it was?
She was like the worm's sorceress. You know, she could become a worm. Maybe, you know, you don't.
Did
really
she
know.
become a worm?
I don't know. Where was she at the end?
Yeah.
I thought at the end she popped out of the well when they dynamite the worm well. She comes flying out along with the worm chunks. But see, at one point they determine everything is too dangerous. They're trying to kill my girlfriend / fiance / wife. And they take a boat and just leave, like how everyone wants a horror novel to end.
That led you to believe they actually left. And then,
they actually leave the awful place. Like you're at a movie in a horror and you're like, get out of the house. They actually do.
Yeah, they
leave the house. They leave the island. And then all of a sudden they said, you know what? We got to go back.
For no apparent reason. Well, I mean, it was like the safety of the Isle of Man. They're going after, but Isle of Man, that was already identified as, you know, the place they would go to anyway. So it didn't make any sense.
But then the worm came out to sea with them.
But they didn't go to Isle of Man. They talked about it, but then they ended up going exactly where they left, right near the worm and the lair of the worm.
Yeah.
And that was after, Adam Sultan, he thought about it and he said, well, this is my plan. I'm going to buy the property, which stands over the worm's hole, the lair, I guess.
Yeah.
And, he went ahead and he bought it, and, he spent all of his time, fixing all of the demolition to destroy the thing, and that's what happened at the end. So he did it through property, he did it through capital.
So he buys the property and he fills up the wormhole with sand and dynamite. And then Lady Arabella, who's the ancient keeper of the worm, I guess her family must have been helping take care of the worm all these years. She goes back there and she sees all the sand and dynamite and doesn't do anything about it. And she's supposed to be like the worm's ally.
Yeah,
I didn't
try not
understand.
to make much sense of that. I mean, just don't read into it. And then your remark about the kite. What do you think about that, Ryan?
The kite was the best part of the whole story to me.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool part.
It was just this weird. It almost reminds me of Ray Bradbury had a weird kite thing going, and Something Wicked This Way.
Did he ever?
And something about kites flying at night is odd, but I don't know. I really like the description of this kite just flying in the sky, like this huge like hawk. And did you guys think that there was some point to it, like when the kite was low or high?
Well,
he kept putting.
I want to hear your interpretation of what the kite meant first. All right. Because, I mean, I already kind of talked about the kite with you. So I know that you're on it, and I'm wondering what you think about it.
You know what, Rick? Honestly, I don't have a conclusion with the kite.
You don't?
I thought it was well described, and it added a really creepy element.
Yeah.
And, it did seem like, what's the guy's name? Edgar
Caswell, yeah.
Caswell. He started adding kite runners to the kite
Caswell.
that would fly up to the kite. And he started to go, it seemed like he went more and more mad the more he did that.
Yeah, he sent like terrible messages up to the kite.
Yeah.
From his tower, right?
So was that a signal to the worm or something?
Well, I just saw it as a signal for sure. And it was definitely a signal because of the reactions that, the flocks of birds had with the kite. First of all, they thought it was like a big, condor or something looking for smaller birds of prey or whatever. But, I think it sort of represented his malintention for the entire community once he realized that there was an entire couple of chapters written from his perspective. And this is the antagonist. And it was kind of cool, kind of going through his motions, figuring out this big mysterious box that was shipped in from France that he had heard that his one of his immediate ancestors.
The Mesmer's box.
The Mesmer's box. He was trying to put some things together. I don't think he ever accomplished anything there, but it was so important to him that he was like working with it in his sleep. And he was so sort of hell-bent on just passing the time away with all of these things that he was unpacking from the chest. He ended up like just finding some spare parts to set up these runners or messages to the kite. And I mean, it's just a signal to the entire area that like this guy has got some evil intentions, and it was making people crazy too. So it was like a Nintendo sending out signals.
So you think the kite was hypnotizing the whole area?
Yes, it was depressing the entire area, or oppressing.
And do you think that he was doing that because of Lady Arabella's influence on him?
Well, she couldn't have the.
But she was trying to control him.
He couldn't have the pigeon. He couldn't have the nice, farm girl who was the most beautiful at the ball that he held when he moved into the castle. What was her name? Lily, forget her last name.
Lilla, right? Wasn't it Lilla?
Lilla could be her last name. I can't remember. Watford. But she had a sister, Mimi, who ended up getting married to Adam Sultan. And, at first you would think that Adam was, head over heels for Lily because of her just raw beauty. But he ended up falling for Mimi. And that's when I liked Adam more, when he went for Mimi instead. Yeah. But yeah, there's some good tidbits.
And in the end, the kite ends up being the catalyst to the dynamite, right? Doesn't the kite get electrified? And for some reason they bring...
That was the fuse that, exploded the
But doesn't Lady Arabella bring... Oh, she brings the fuse from the kite to the dynamite because she's trying to blast the worm loose, right?
She extended the tether to the well, conducted electricity, right to the well. Yeah,
but she must have been trying to bust the worm loose, right? Why else was she doing that?
I have no idea. I didn't try to read into that one. She was insane, and I have no idea. The whole time it was explained to Adam from the beginning that Lady Arabella, despite her beauty, she was always looking for a suitor who would balance out her credit and debts. Yeah. So Adam, of course, stayed away, despite, her seduction.
Yeah. Another thing, when you were mentioning about the point of view switches from the different characters, there's no break. It's not done a chapter break sometimes, and there's no asterisk markers or any kind of...
That's the kind of stuff I really like. I mean, if you're going to write from the third person like that, I mean... You can do whatever the hell you want. You're God, you can get into the minds of...
Yeah, but nowadays they would set off the changes in point of view with a break in the there'd be a space there or some kind of characters to show the reader that they've point of views. I found it a little discombobulating.
Yeah.
I caught on.
I felt like the whole courtesan nobility, the spying, the correspondence, and the real sort of... that saving face sort of mentality, the Victorian mentality, never to kind of be forthcoming and just sort of probe. I mean, that's what people did. They spied on each other, and that's kind of what makes Downton Abbey so popular, I think, is just because of all the snooping going on. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, these people have nothing better to do but to spy on all of their family members. It's funny as shit.
To me, it slowed things down because every time he did something, he had to come back and conspire with Sir Nathaniel about it and have another, I don't know if they were having a smoke or a drink.
Yeah, it was a long drink, yeah.
And they'd have to explain everything they were doing and agree with it and support each other.
They would verbally verify their, commitments.
I'm thinking this, Sir Nathaniel. And Sir Nathaniel, that's good that you're thinking that.
Yeah. I kind of liked it. I like that dialogue between Nathaniel and Adam. But, it's not for everyone.
There's a lot of it.
I personally like statecraft, and that kind of gave you a little glimpse of that.
There is definitely, and I don't know if maybe Will can jump in at this point.
Wilk, are you there?
I am not listening to a goddamn thing tonight.
I kind of thought
it's like a normal episode. The book is...
No, I mean, this is very dull.
Should we end it now?
Should have did 10 minutes ago.
Oh.
The kite. You guys went on this tangent with the kite. And
well, you don't like the kite?
I just can't imagine anyone would be listening to this.
What did you like about the book? Did you like anything?
Very little.
What did
anything? Very hard read.
Did any of it stand out to you?
I did not enjoy this book.
Not any part of it.
No.
What was your main? What was your main complaint?
It was very incoherent.
It was a mess. I'll give you that. Yeah.
I really don't think it should have been published. I mean, it's a very poorly written book.
Huh. What did you think about the smelly minstrel or what do they call him?
I did. I mean, I don't know, guys. I mean, it's kind of sad it got published.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a bunch of like incoherent. I mean, he's got some ideas here and there, but like they don't piece together. It's not a real book. It's someone who's famous who wrote a bunch of different things and they mashed them together.
It was a swan song. You know, it's like when Led Zeppelin put out Coda and the album sucked. I mean, they basically sold that album because they became popular on Led Zeppelin 4. Stairway to Heaven.
Don't they have isn't there a song on that album called the Hot Dog Song?
No, that's Into the Outdoor. The Hot Dog Song really is a seaside, though. I mean, that should not even be on any kind of tape at all.
When they named it the Hot Dog Song.
Oh my God.
This book also, I want to recognize that this book has racist elements.
Oh, huge.
Undeniably. It's kind of characteristic of the time.
But then again, we read the unabridged version, so they might have cut all that out. I know that they toned it down in one part, but I don't know if they just covered the whole book like they should have.
It didn't seem that racist. It was racist.
That black... The African who came with Edgar Caswell, I mean, he was described as like a savage, and he was just evil.
All their descriptions of him were. It was more than just him being bad. It was also just like his race. They were insulting his race as being inferior. It was all just racist stuff.
Extremely. Yeah.
Why is that racist?
Why is it racist to say like another race is inferior?
It's like xenophobic, man.
Yeah, but they didn't say his race was inferior. They didn't.
No, they did say that. That's what I'm telling you.
Oh, well,
they said his race was inferior.
Yeah, maybe it was. Who knows?
It definitely was. But it just sort
of like
kill him.
He
further
gets killed
develops
off.
my distaste for English nobility and like the message they're trying to instill into their people. Just don't respect other people that don't look like us. What do you think the point? It's crazy.
Do you think the point of that character was just to add another element to get scarier or something? And because he could supposedly he could smell death and he would smell death. That was seemed to be the only point of his character.
Yeah, that's his talent. He can smell death. Yeah.
What about this? He kills off Lilla. Did you think there was any particular point to that?
He didn't kill Lilla, did he?
I thought she dies.
Where did they say his race was inferior? She kills him. She kills him.
In her descriptions of him, in Adam's description, like everyone's talking about him.
Everyone hates him because he's from Africa.
Yeah.
Well, they hate him. They don't like him, but he seems
to the point where they almost want to just kill him. If it were legal, they would kill him. That's what it was kind of describing.
And they're saying to kill him, it doesn't matter because of where he's from.
He's a savage.
Well, no one's going to prosecute you for killing a black guy in the 1800s. No. That's not racist. Okay.
It's not racist?
Well, it's not.
Well,
that's the time they were living in. But I'm not saying this wasn't like some propaganda thing against Africans. That was the world they lived in.
It had the racism you'd sort of expect from this kind of era writing.
Why is that racist, though? The word Negro is racist now, but that was a pretty common phrase in the 60s and 50s.
Well, I think they use other words besides that in this book.
Yeah, they use the NIGG word.
Did they really?
Yeah.
No.
You read it too quickly.
Maybe.
Or did you read the abridged version?
I just got some shit online.
You read 7 years ago, right?
I read it 7 days ago.
No, I mean they do. They and they're every time I talk about them, they're like, well, he's from this race and that race. They're describing his race. And
it's very important. Bloodlines are very important. Yeah. In monarchist England.
But yeah, I think Lilla dies at the end. She's killed. That's when Mimi goes to confront Edgar, and then I think, don't they have another stare-off? And then she comes home and tells everyone about it.
I thought Lilla died from a stare-off with Edgar.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. You're right. That's how it is.
She fainted and she never woke up or something.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of crazy. I mean, I don't know if that happens. Probably doesn't.
Yeah. So I guess the point, it is important, I don't know if we discussed this enough, is that there is the original version has, 100 more pages almost. And in 1925, they made an abridged version and cut out quite a bit. So the old versions, I think, are in the public domain. There are versions online that you can just get for free that have the unabridged version. I haven't, we didn't read the abridged version.
You're right.
I don't know if it makes more sense.
The N-word is in here quite a bit. I'm looking at it. Yeah. Sorry. I just kind of glossed over it.
You got a PDF version? You're looking for cases of...
Yeah. No, I downloaded it.
Okay.
I basically read it through my phone, and then I can... Yeah.
That's good. You have like a selective automatic filter in your brain.
Well, I just hear that word about 50 times an hour anyways every day, so it just kind
of... What?
I listen to a lot of rap music. It kind of keeps me awake on my drives, so I don't know. I don't even hear that word anymore. I remember, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of like a Huck Finn kind of thing here.
Yeah, right.
It didn't strike me as a hateful, racist book. It just struck me as, well, these times...
No, Huck Finn wasn't racist like that, though. I mean, this took it to a whole new level.
I mean... I guess.
I think this has racist stuff in it, and it's not unexpected from this time period. It's what you would expect.
Yeah.
That's it went above and beyond what I expected, Frank. It was almost shocking.
Did it really at this point?
Yeah, it did. It was more racist than the what do we call it? The Puritan or
the
Solomon Kane,
Robert Howard.
Yeah,
than his stuff.
Yeah, I thought it was more.
I think I agree with you, Rick. It was more it was more racist than I thought it would. But I reading stuff from this time, you do expect that. So that's present. Be aware of it.
Yeah, despite all of that, I thought it was decent. I'll give it 3 stars.
You want to do final comments? Okay.
Yeah.
So you give 3 stars, and then any more final comments, or that's just leave it at that for you?
I thought it was a good piece of writing too. The guy might have been old. He still wrote fairly well in his descriptors, and some of the dialogue was pretty good. But like what Wilk said, the thing was completely disjointed, and it kept confusing you as a reader, or me at least. So if you're not willing to stomach any of that stuff, then ignore it.
Okay, I'll go next, Wilk. Then you can go last. I will give this book 2.5 stars. And I don't think this is worth reading. I think Wilk has a pretty good handle on it. And the guy wrote it at the end of his life. If he wasn't the writer of Dracula, where would this be? It has interesting elements. There are some stuff in it that I like. The kite thing was interesting. The description of the worm's ultimate demise was interesting. There were some eerie parts that you can have appreciation of. And so if you're interested in Stoker and seeing his other stuff, it's worth checking out for that reason. But by itself, like everyone is saying, it kind of goes all over the place. I didn't like the dialogue. I didn't really have an appreciation for what Rick's talking about, the diplomacy. I felt like everything was getting redundant and resaid, and it just kind of kept stalling out the plot, which the plot had issues.
I'm surprised you have an issue with the redundancy and the confirming constantly, because this is what
especially
you
after
do
all
as
my texts.
Podcast manager. Except you don't speak as eloquently as the writing does.
Oh, I'm no Sir Nathaniel.
No, it's like getting a phone call from someone in jail, 3 times a week. Hey, are you going to remember my baggie this time?
That's how you describe me, Rick? I'm worlds away from Sir Nathaniel. All right, well, let's turn it over to you. I can't.
I like that conversation better. I give this 0 stars. It's
0.
Just not it's not a book. It's not a coherent book. It didn't make any. I don't think it didn't make sense. Yeah. And I wouldn't even call it a book.
I give it 3 stars because the parts I liked a lot.
Rick, let him finish his comment before you say.
I'm not trying to defend myself.
I'm not attacking. Yeah, you guys can get whatever you want. I'm just saying.
I know you're not.
I was surprised at the complete lack of story structure, and the fact that this book exists is I don't know. It's an abomination. It's not poorly written. It's just poorly constructed to the point that it's not a story.
It's published on the brand of his name. That's it. That's why.
Look, you won't even give him 1 star just because it's Bram Stoker?
I don't think anyone should read this book. I think Bram Stoker's family should sue to have this book pulled away, and it's embarrassing that it got published. I feel bad for his legacy that this is attached to it.
Okay.
He started a book, didn't finish it. That's all.
Let's end it there.
It's an embarrassing legacy.
I will say I'll invite everyone to join us next episode when we cover the second half, where we cover the movie version of The Lair White Worm that came out in 1980, directed by Ken Russell and Amanda Donohoe. So in the interim, go ahead and visit us at nodeodorant.com. You can follow us like our page on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. We're in most places you can get podcasts. Go on to iTunes. We'd appreciate a 5-star rating or any kind of comments or feedback. You can also find us on Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Google Play Music has podcasts now. So pretty much most places you can get podcasts, we're there. So feel free to subscribe. We also have a YouTube channel where we put the podcast feed out, and we appreciate all feedback. So until next time, we will say a heartfelt good night, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
For more information on the topics discussed in this episode, or to read our show notes and find us on social media, visit nodeodorant.com. For more information on Ryan Sean O'Reilly and his various works of fiction, visit ryanseanoreilly.com. For more information on David Wilkinson, visit drycracker.com. For more information on Richard Mell, check out his profile at goodreads.com. The theme music for this podcast was written by John Doyle from the band I Decline. You can visit him at i-decline.com. Voiceover for this podcast was provided by me, Margaret O'Reilly. Well, that concludes our episode. We hope you've learned a lot. Again, thanks for listening to our show. And always, always remember, there is no deodorant in outer space.
I got some Coors Banquet beer. No, I don't want any video action on me. Sorry. No. I don't need your nosy ass to be looking into my house right now. Hey, I need to get a Coors. Hold on. All right. Are we starting yet? I'm ready.
All right.
Yeah.
Are we ready? What was that? What was that?
What's going on?
I don't know. Someone's bumping something.
Just fucking go. Go, go.
Okay. Let's all hit stop.
Nah, but
That went over.
way over, as it always does.